It's kind of funny when you think about it. Like when we look at a towering skyscraper or a beautiful suspension bridge or something.
Right. Yeah.
We are almost always captivated by the visible parts.
Yeah.
We look at the gleaming glass reflecting the sun or the sweeping steel cables.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer height of it all.
Exactly. The dizzying height. And we stand there on the sidewalk, craning our necks, looking up, and we're just completely and utterly ignoring the most important part of the entire structure.
The foundation.
The foundation, that invisible architecture that's just, buried deep underground, encased in concrete and earth. And that is actually what's holding the whole thing up.
It is, and it's entirely hidden from view. I mean, you never think about the foundation of a building when you walk into a fancy lobby.
Right, never.
But if that underground foundation cracks, or if it shifts even just a few inches, the entire building comes down. We just take it completely for granted until the exact moment something goes wrong.
That is so true. And that dynamic, ignoring the foundation until the walls literally start cracking, that is exactly what we are doing with our own lives every single day.
We really are.
So welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are exploring the invisible architecture of your life, your habits, and, your daily routines.
Which is such a massive topic.
It is, but we are looking at this through a really unique lens today. We have this fascinating source material that provides a linguistic framework.
Great, and it traces how the actual vocabulary we use to describe our daily routines evolves.
Yeah, it starts from basic objective facts and climbs all the way up to profound philosophical concepts about human identity and even cultural critiques of modern productivity.
The premise here is just incredibly compelling because, as you track this linguistic progression moving from the most basic sentence structures to highly advanced vocabulary, it perfectly mirrors the psychological complexity of trying to change human behavior.
That blew my mind.
I mean, the words we instinctively choose when we talk about our days aren't just random. They literally reflect our mental state, our struggles, and our relationship with our own routines.
So my question for you listening right now is this. I want you to think about your morning today. Think about the exact moment you opened your eyes.
That first moment.
Yeah. Was that morning intentional? Did you actively design those first few hours, or were you just completely on autopilot?
Most of us are on autopilot, let's be honest.
Right. Were you just like a piece of software running a pre-written script? Well, by the end of this deep dive, you're going to have the exact mental and linguistic tools to not only understand those daily loops, but to actually see the invisible architecture holding them in place.
We are going fundamentally deep today.
We really are, starting right from the absolute bedrock.
Yeah, because before we can even begin to talk about changing our lives or, hacking our routines, we have to know how to accurately describe them. So in language learning, there is this universal scale for fluency, right? Ranging from beginner to absolute mastery, and the foundational level of describing our habits correlates to that beginner stage.
So like the A2 level in our source material.
Exactly, the A2 level, essentially beginner language. But psychologically, this is the bedrock. This is the raw data of our lives.
Right, and at this foundational level, we rely heavily on a very specific, very rigid tense, the present simple.
Yes, the present simple.
We don't say, I am waking up right now. We say, I wake up at 7 a.m. It is a stated fact.
It's a repeated action. It is totally undeniable. I wake up, I drink coffee, I commute to work.
It's so absolute.
It is incredibly absolute. It's the language of pure, unadulterated routine. It treats time and action as constants. But, if we just speak in these stark two-word facts, it feels robotic.
Very robotic. Like beep, boop, I drink coffee.
Exactly. So to capture the rhythm of how humans actually live, we inevitably introduce what is often called the spice of language.
The spice of language. I love that phrase so much.
It's a good one.
Because without it, life really just sounds like a factory line.
Yeah.
So these are the adverbs of frequency. The words that sit right before the main verb and tell us exactly how often a repeated action occurs.
Right.
And if you map these adverbs out, they actually form a mathematical scale of our behavior. It's fascinating. At the very top of that scale, operating at 100% certainty, you have the word always.
Always.
Yeah. For example, I always drink a large glass of water in the morning.
Notice the weight of that word, though. Always. It leaves absolutely no room for deviation.
Zero room.
No room for error at all. But if you move slightly down that scale to about, say, 80%, you find words like usually, or normally.
Right, like I usually have oatmeal for breakfast.
Exactly. It implies a strong consistency, a really dedicated pattern, but it quietly acknowledges the existence of, the occasional weekend pancake.
Right, it's like the 80-20 rule built right into our grammar.
It really is.
And then we hit 50%, right in the middle. The word sometimes.
Right.
Like I sometimes go for a walk during my lunch break.
Which is basically a coin toss.
Yeah. It might happen, it might not. It depends entirely on external factors, like the weather or your mood or just how many emails are sitting in your inbox that day.
Right, the 50-50 split. And as we drop closer to zero, the behavior becomes an anomaly. So we use words like rarely or hardly ever.
Right. I hardly ever watch TV in the morning.
Yeah, meaning the behavior exists in your universe, but only under highly unusual circumstances. Maybe you're sick in bed or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And finally, at absolute 0%, we hit the floor. The word never.
I never drink coffee after 5 p.m. because I won't be able to sleep.
Right. It's a hard boundary. The ceiling is always, and the floor is never.
And when you combine these adverbs with basic sequencing words, first, then, after that, finally, you get this perfect clinical anatomy of a routine.
You really do.
Let's look at a standard morning through this lens.
Yeah.
Like first, I usually wake up at 6:30 a.m. Then I always drink a large glass of water. After that, I sometimes do 10 minutes of yoga. Finally, I take a shower and get ready.
Just listen to how objective that sounds.
It really does.
It reads exactly like a technical manual for operating a machine. First, prime the engine, then check the oil, finally, turn the key.
Yeah.
There is a certain, undeniable comfort in that level of simplicity. When our language is this foundational, we are literally just stating data points. We completely remove human emotion, fatigue, and willpower from the equation.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because this is where I start to feel a little bit uneasy about this beginner level of language.
Oh, how so?
Well, if we only view our routines through this foundational lens, just these repeated facts, these rigid percentages, adverbs placed neatly before verbs, aren't we basically describing ourselves as robots?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like we're just running a software program. It's like input, alarm clock ringing, output, 10 minutes of yoga. Where is the free will in this grammatical structure?
That's a really good point.
It just feels like we are stripping away the messy human experience just to make the day sound organized.
And that is precisely the limitation of this foundational language. And honestly, it exposes a massive psychological trap.
A trap.
Yes, a huge one. If we rely purely on absolutes like always or never to define our routines, we are setting ourselves up for catastrophic friction.
Oh, because we fail.
Exactly. Think about the reality of human nature. Human beings rarely, if ever, operate at a perfect 100% or a perfect 0%.
Yeah, we are messy, we have moods, we have terrible nights of sleep where we just can't wake up.
Exactly. We have unforeseen emergencies. The kids get sick, the car won't start.
Right.
So when you define your foundational routine entirely with the present simple tense, when you say, I always do 10 minutes of yoga, you are creating a very fragile architecture.
Oh, wow.
The very first morning, you wake up with a headache or your alarm just doesn't go off and you skip that yoga. The always is fundamentally broken. The statement you use to define your life literally becomes a lie.
It's a software crash.
Yes, software crash.
Yeah.
And that crash introduces this intense psychological friction. You realize you aren't a robot, and the objective facts of your routine just no longer serve you.
Right. You look at the script you've been running and realize, uh-oh, I need an upgrade.
Exactly. And that realization forces us out of the beginner stage of language and into a much, much more complex psychological territory.
Yes. Which brings us to the builder phase.
Yeah.
Because eventually we look at those foundational facts, we look at the robot running the script, and we decide we want better software.
We want to improve.
We want to be better. So this represents the intermediate stage of fluency, like B1, where our language shifts from being static and descriptive to being incredibly dynamic.
Yes.
We stop talking about what is, and we start talking about our intentions, what we desire.
And linguistically, the engine driving this desire for change is the phrasal verb.
The phrasal verb.
Yeah. English relies heavily on these multi-word verbs to navigate the human drive for self-improvement. They are the primary tools we use to dismantle an old life and build a new one.
It's like the vocabulary of ambition. I realized looking at this framework that when we try to fix our lives, we don't use simple verbs anymore. We use these heavy compound phrases.
We do.
Let's look at the three major phrasal verbs that define this builder phase. First up, when you want to create a new positive habit, you use the phrase to take up.
To take up.
You don't just start a hobby, you take it up.
Yeah.
Like you take up running to get fitter. You take up meditation.
Right.
You take up swimming on Tuesday mornings or reading physical books before sleep.
Pay attention to the physicality of that phrase, though. To take up.
Yeah, it's very physical.
It implies a deliberate muscular acquisition. You are choosing to lift a new weight. To add a new responsibility or discipline to your existing architecture, it requires strength.
Wow. Yeah, you're literally picking something up and carrying it.
Exactly. But what about the things we want to remove? When a foundational habit turns out to be destructive, the language shifts dramatically to the phrase, to give up.
Right. And give up feels so heavy. It means to stop doing something entirely.
Complete elimination.
Yeah, to completely eradicate it from the routine, giving up smoking, giving up caffeine, giving up taking the smartphone into the bedroom at night. It is absolute cessation.
But consider what we just discussed regarding the trap of the words always and never. Absolutes are notoriously hostile to human psychology.
Oh, right. Because we're messy.
Exactly. Demanding that you give up something entirely requires a monumental, exhausting amount of willpower. It is often a complete setup for failure.
Yeah, I've been there.
Most people have. Which is why there is a third, incredibly crucial phrasal verb in this builder phase, to cut down on.
Yes. To cut down on, meaning reducing the volume or the frequency of something rather than eliminating it entirely from your universe. It's like cutting down on chocolate, cutting down on junk food, cutting down on screen time before bed.
It's a negotiation with yourself.
Negotiation, I like that.
Yeah, it's often a far more realistic goal than absolute cessation because you aren't severing the behavior completely. You are just managing its footprint in your life.
So here is how I visualize this shift from the robotic foundational language to this dynamic builder language. Compare the idea of giving up a bad habit to jumping off a cliff.
Okay, a cliff.
Yeah, it's the cold turkey approach. You're standing at the top of the cliff, holding your bad habit, and then you just jump into the void of 0%. And you just hope you survive the fall.
That's a vivid image.
But cutting down on is like walking down a staircase.
Yeah.
It's measured harm reduction.
Yeah.
You take one step down, you adjust to the new altitude, and then you take another.
Right, much safer.
Much safer. But here's what I don't understand. If we know the staircase works better, if we know it's safer, why do you think society universally glamorizes the cliff jump?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. Like we love the narrative of the person who just wakes up one Tuesday and gives up everything bad all at once, cold turkey, when walking down the staircase is usually vastly more successful.
Well, we glamorize the cliff jump because it sounds heroic. It sounds decisive and dramatic.
It makes a better movie montage.
Exactly. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of behavioral psychology, the language we choose dictates our underlying strategy for self-improvement. When you say you are going to give up something, you are immediately setting up an unrealistic, high-stakes binary.
A pass-fail test.
Yes. It is either absolute success, meaning you never touch the phone in bed again for the rest of your life, or it is total failure the absolute second you glance at a text message at 11 p.m. There is no middle ground whatsoever.
You fall off the cliff, you hit the bottom, and you think, well, I failed. Might as well scroll for 3 hours.
Precisely. The language of giving up completely robs you of resilience, but choosing the phrase cut down on offers grace.
Grace.
It inherently acknowledges the messy human element we talked about earlier. If your goal is to cut down on sugar and you eat one piece of chocolate after dinner instead of 3, you have successfully cut down on it. You have achieved the goal. You are winning.
That's such a better way to frame it.
It is. The conversation about our routines becomes infinitely more dynamic in this builder phase because it introduces not just our lofty goals, but our very real capacity for struggle and negotiation.
And struggle we do.
We certainly do.
Because let's be honest about how this actually plays out in real life.
Yeah.
We make these grand architectural plans. We sit down on a Sunday night, we break out our journals, we use all our shiny new phrasal verbs.
The Sunday night motivation.
Always. We declare, I am going to take a marathon training and I am going to give up all processed sugar. And then 2 weeks later, it's a rainy Tuesday morning, you're exhausted, and you just fail.
Yep.
You completely abandon the plan. The running shoes stay in the closet. The sugar is consumed. Why does that happen? Why does the builder phase so often just collapse?
To answer that, we have to move out of the planning stage and enter the psychological trenches of our routine.
The trenches?
In our framework, this is the analyst phase. The upper intermediate level of understanding, like B2. This is where we stop making plans and start examining the deep psychological barriers that actively prevent change.
Right.
And linguistically, the language becomes incredibly vivid, colorful, and metaphorical. We stop using clean verbs and start using complex idioms.
Oh man, the imagery in this section is just amazing. Let's start with the most famous one. When you fail to stop a long-held behavior, we say, old habits die hard.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah. The framework gives a painfully relatable example. You set out on your commute with a firm intention to buy a healthy breakfast, maybe an apple and a black coffee, and you somehow end up at the counter holding a glazed donut.
It just happens.
You didn't even consciously make the decision.
Old habits die hard.
Think deeply about the weight and violence of that phrase, though. Die hard.
Yeah, that's intense. It treats the habit not as a passive action, but almost as a living, breathing entity inside of your brain that is actively fighting for its own survival.
Like a parasite.
Basically, yeah. It implies that your bad habit has a pulse. It isn't just a lack of willpower on your part. It's an active, entrenched resistance to your new intentions.
It's the habit refusing to be evicted from the building.
Exactly.
And that leads directly to the overarching feeling that follows failure. When your routine becomes too repetitive, when you feel trapped in a boring, unchangeable cycle and you can't seem to execute your new plans, the idiom we use is being stuck in a rut.
Stuck in a rut.
The classic example is having the exact same job, taking the exact same commute and running the exact same routine for 5 straight years. But let's look at the actual physical imagery of what a rut is.
Right, because a rut is a physical thing.
Yeah.
It's a deep track made by a wheel in a muddy road or path.
Right, so imagine you're driving a heavy wooden cart down a muddy dirt road. It's been raining, the wheels sink deep into the mud, and day after day you drive that same cart down that same muddy road.
Creating the track.
Over time, those tracks get deeper and deeper. The sun comes out, the mud dries, and those deep tracks harden like concrete.
Oh.
Now you were driving down the road and you suddenly decide, I want to turn left. You turn the steering wheel, but you literally can't turn the cart. The physical environment you've created over the last 5 years forces the wheel to stay in the exact same path. You are physically stuck in the rut.
Wow.
Such a profound metaphor for how neurological pathways form in the human brain.
It perfectly illustrates the neuroscience of habit. I mean, the more frequently you perform a routine, the deeper and more efficient that neurological rut becomes. Your brain loves efficiency.
Right, wants to be lazy.
It wants to conserve energy.
Yeah.
So it actively wants to keep the wheel in that established track. To wrench the wheel out of a hardened rut requires a tremendous, almost exhausting amount of cognitive energy.
Which explains why, when we finally summon that energy, we use another incredibly vivid idiom to describe the victory. To turn over a new leaf.
Yes, turning over a new leaf.
Making a major positive fresh start. Joining a gym, throwing away all the junk food, finally wrenching the cart out of the mud.
It's a huge effort.
The imagery here is so hopeful too. It's turning to a blank page in a book, leaving all the messy, scribbled-on, mistake-filled pages behind, and starting to write a completely new, better story with a clean slate.
But of course, maintaining that blank page brings us face to face with the forces that want to pull us back into the mud.
Always.
The framework identifies these forces as the twin villains of productivity.
The twin villains. Procrastination and getting sidetracked.
It's important to define them precisely, though, because they operate differently.
Okay, how so?
Well, procrastination is the intentional, willful delay of a difficult or boring task. You know you should do it, you know the deadline is approaching, but you actively choose to put it off in favor of short-term comfort.
Right, choosing the couch over the gym.
Exactly. Getting sidetracked, however, is a bit more insidious. It's being distracted from a main goal while you are actively trying to pursue it.
Ah, right.
The example provided is sitting down at your desk with every intention to write a crucial report, but then you open a browser tab and lose an entire hour to an interesting online article.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Culturally, we always talk about procrastinating and getting sidetracked as massive moral failures.
Oh, constantly.
We call them villains. We feel immense guilt about them. We berate ourselves for lacking discipline. But think about the muddy track we just talked about.
Right.
If we are genuinely stuck in a rut, doing a boring job for 5 years, living a totally unstimulating routine, isn't getting sidetracked by a fascinating article, just our brain's desperate, suffocating attempt to find some kind of stimulation outside of that muddy wheel track.
Oh, wow.
Like, is it really a moral failure, or is it a survival mechanism for a bored mind?
That is a phenomenal way to reframe it, truly.
Yeah.
When we look at distraction not as a symptom of laziness, but as a symptom of being stuck in a rut, it changes the entire paradigm of how we view our failures.
It really does.
It brings profound psychological weight back to the phrase, old habits die hard. It acknowledges the immense graining struggle of behavioral change. It proves that failure to change isn't a lack of character. It's a literal battle against ingrained neurological pathways and environments that are just starving us of novelty.
I love that so much. It's not just you being lazy. You are fighting the mud. Your brain is just trying to find a tiny patch of dry grass to look at.
You are fighting the mud. And unfortunately, modern society doesn't really like to hear that excuse.
No, they do not.
Modern society does not care about your mud. It demands that you pull the cart out of the rut instantly, upgrade the engine, and run at maximum speed at all times.
Right.
Which brings us to the cultural summit of our deep dive.
Yes, the philosopher phase, the advanced stages, C1 and C2 in our linguistic framework. This is the point where our very personal human desire to turn over a new leaf gets completely hijacked by corporate society and modern digital culture.
It gets twisted.
Having a good routine stops being a healthy personal choice that you make to feel better. It transforms into a massive, stressful, moral imperative.
The framework refers to this societal shift as the cult of optimization.
The cult of optimization.
And we need to pay very close attention to that phrasing. Optimization in a vacuum is simply the concept of making the absolute best, most effective use of a situation or a resource. It's an engineering term.
Right, like optimizing a supply chain.
Exactly. But attaching the word cult to it implies that as a culture, we have elevated this concept to a religion.
It is absolutely a religion. I mean, in this cult, every single minute of your day is treated as a raw resource that must be extracted and leveraged for maximum output.
Every minute.
You aren't allowed to just go to sleep anymore. No. You have to buy a $300 smartwatch to track your REM cycles to optimize your recovery.
Right.
You aren't allowed to just eat a sandwich for lunch and enjoy the taste. You have to consume beige engineered meal replacement powders to optimize your digestion and eliminate the time wasted chewing. It's wild.
It is wild. And it fundamentally changes how we view ourselves as a species. The cult of optimization treats the human being not as an organism, but as a machine that requires constant tuning, endless upgrading, and relentless data analysis.
And it leads directly to this dangerous illusion that the framework identifies as hyperproductivity.
Hyperproductivity.
Yeah. This is the toxic myth that ultimate success and worth in life require a punishing, supposedly perfect routine. You know exactly what this looks like if you spend 5 minutes on social media.
Oh, we all know it.
It's the influencer waking up at 4 a.m., immediately submerging themselves in a freezing ice bath to spike their adrenaline, journaling their 10-year goals for exactly 10 minutes, and drinking a scientifically formulated green smoothie before the sun has even thought about coming up.
And our source material makes a very strong critical claim here. This obsession with hyperproductivity and relentless optimization is fundamentally detrimental.
Detrimental.
It is actively harmful to our mental health because it leaves absolutely no room for spontaneity, for error, or for simply being human.
So I want you to imagine your day as a suitcase.
A suitcase, okay.
Just a standard piece of carry-on luggage. In a normal, healthy life, you pack your clothes, maybe throw in a book, and there's some empty space left over in there. If you buy a souvenir on your trip, you can easily fit it in. If you need to rearrange things, you have the room to do it.
Right, flexibility.
Exactly. But if you are trapped in the cult of optimization, you are treating that suitcase like a high-stakes game of Tetris. You roll every single sock into a tight cylinder. You vacuum seal every shirt to remove the air. You stuff every single cubic millimeter with a productive habit. You optimize the space until the fabric is literally stretching.
Straining at the seams.
Yes. But what happens when you hit a bump in the road? What happens when your flight is delayed, or a meeting runs long, or your kid gets sick?
It bursts.
The suitcase bursts. The zipper violently breaks.
Yeah.
Doesn't hyperproductivity, by trying to make us invincible, actually make us incredibly dangerously fragile?
That is the paradox. The fragility of the optimized life is its biggest secret. And this raises an important question, perhaps the most vital philosophical question of this entire deep dive.
Which is?
What exactly are we optimizing for? When we vacuum seal our days, are we optimizing for happiness? Are we optimizing for fulfillment or joy or human connection? Or are we just optimizing for output?
Wow, just output.
The phrase cult of optimization perfectly captures the inherent danger. We are worshiping productivity at the altar of our own humanity. In our desperate attempt to exert absolute control over a chaotic world, we are systematically stripping away the joy of unstructured time.
So true.
We are eliminating the beauty of an accidental hour-long conversation with a stranger, or the profound peace of just staring out a window at the rain without a smartwatch buzzing to tell us our heart rate has dropped.
We are optimizing the humanity right out of ourselves. We're turning ourselves back into the robots from the beginner phase, just with fancier vocabulary.
We really are.
So, if the cult of optimization is a trap, if the 4 a.m. ice baths and the engineered smoothies aren't the answer to a good life, how do we actually change our lives without losing our minds?
Because the desire to change is still valid.
Right. We still want to improve. We still want to get our cart out of the muddy rut.
To find the antidote to this cultural exhaustion, we move to the final, most sophisticated concepts in our framework, the absolute peak of understanding behavioral change. And it starts by entirely rejecting the massive sweeping resolutions of the builder phase and looking at something microscopic.
Atomic habits, the concept popularized by author James Clear.
Exactly.
The theory here completely undercuts the cliff jump mentality.
Yeah.
It argues that success doesn't come from massive, dramatic, agonizing changes. It doesn't come from reinventing your entire life on a Sunday night.
No, it doesn't.
It comes from the compound interest of microscopic, tiny, almost invisible daily improvements.
The key phrase to focus on here is incremental progress. Progress made in very small, gradual, manageable steps. This philosophy champions consistency over intensity.
Consistency over intensity.
You don't need to commit to running 5 miles on your first day of exercising. You just need to commit to putting your running shoes on and walking out the front door. That is an atomic habit. It is so small, it is almost impossible to fail.
It's taking one single step down the staircase.
Yeah.
But even with the grace of atomic habits, our brains are incredibly tricky, and they find a way to sabotage us. Because we live in the information age, with access to endless data, we often fall into a trap the framework calls paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
This is the dark side of habit building in the digital era.
Paralysis by analysis is a highly prevalent, almost universal modern affliction. It is the act of overthinking a situation, researching it to death, gathering so much data that no decision or action is ever actually taken.
The example provided in the framework is painfully accurate for anyone who has ever tried to start a new hobby.
Let's hear it.
It's spending 3 entire weeks researching the absolute perfect workout program. You read hundreds of reviews on the perfect running shoes. You compare the specs of 5 different heart rate monitors. You watch hours of optimization videos.
Sounds familiar.
Right. And at the end of the 3 weeks, you have done absolutely nothing physical. You haven't run a single step.
Because you have tricked your brain's reward system, we end up consuming the idea of a habit instead of actually executing the habit itself.
Wow. Consuming the idea.
The research feels like work, it feels productive, it releases dopamine, but it's an illusion. It is a sophisticated way of staying exactly where you are.
So, if paralysis by analysis is basically just modern procrastination wearing a disguise of productivity, how do we cut through all this noise? How do we stop researching, stop optimizing, and actually achieve real, lasting change?
We reach the pinnacle of our journey. The absolute most advanced way to think about your routines has nothing to do with what you do. It has everything to do with who you are.
Who you are.
True behavioral change requires what the framework calls an identity shift.
An identity shift. This concept is so powerful it practically vibrates. It argues that true change requires a fundamental shift in how you view your core self.
Yeah.
It's the profound difference between saying, I am trying to quit smoking versus saying, I am not a smoker.
Look at the underlying linguistic difference between those two sentences. When you say, I am trying to quit, you are implying that your core identity is still that of a smoker. Yeah. You are just temporarily resisting your own true nature using willpower. And as we know, willpower drains over time. Eventually, your nature will win.
It always does.
But when you say, I am not a smoker, that is a statement of fundamental identity. It's a fact. It's foundational. Just like the present simple tense we started this entire conversation with.
Oh man, it brings us full circle. It's the difference between saying, I'm going for a run today and I am a runner.
Exactly.
If you're a runner, you don't have to debate whether or not to run. It's just what you do. It's who you are. And the source material offers this absolutely stunning metaphor to explain how this identity shift actually happens in practice.
It's a great metaphor.
It says, your daily routines are simply the casting of votes for the type of person you wish to become.
It's a beautifully profound way to look at the most mundane tasks of our lives. Every single time you choose water over soda, every time you read one page of a book instead of scrolling on your phone for 5 minutes, you are casting a vote for the new identity.
Just one little vote.
The mundane, boring daily routines aren't a punishment. They are the actual building blocks of your character.
I absolutely love the casting a vote metaphor
Yeah.
because it provides so much grace.
It really does.
Think about it in terms of a real political election. If I want to be a healthy person, if that is the identity I'm trying to build, and I skip my workout on a Wednesday because I'm tired, and I eat a giant donut instead.
Okay.
Under the cult of optimization, I have completely failed. The perfect streak is broken, the suitcase is burst, I am a failure. But under the voting metaphor, I haven't destroyed my identity. I've just cast one rogue vote for the opposition candidate.
Right.
But as long as the vast majority of my daily votes go toward the person I want to be, I still win the election. The good identity still takes office.
That analogy holds up perfectly. An identity shift doesn't demand robotic optimized perfection. It doesn't require a 4 a.m. ice bath. It relies solely on the sheer consistency of those small positive votes over a long period of time.
Wow.
It replaces exhausting bursts of willpower with quiet, steady accumulation.
We have covered incredible ground today.
We really have.
Let's do a final synthesis of this journey, looking back at the invisible architecture we've uncovered. We started at the absolute bedrock, the alarm clock rings, and we used the beginner foundational language to state the cold, hard, robotic facts of our morning using adverbs of frequency. Always, usually, never.
And we saw how those absolutes create friction, which forced us to navigate the desire for change using intermediate phrasal verbs. We weigh the intense, often doomed difficulty of giving up against the realistic staircase strategy of cutting down on.
From there, we waded into the deep mud, psychological trenches. We look at how old habits die hard and fight for survival. We explored the physical reality of being stuck in a neurological rut, and we reframed the twin villains of procrastination and getting sidetracked as symptoms of a bored mind seeking novelty.
Which led us directly into the cultural critique. The realization that society's cult of optimization and the myth of hyperproductivity is often a harmful, fragile trap that treats human beings like machines meant only for output.
And finally, we reached the summit. We learned that the antidote to all of this immense pressure isn't a perfect routine, but incremental progress. Escaping paralysis by analysis and recognizing the profound truth that our habits are simply votes cast in the ongoing election of our own identity.
It is a remarkable progression. It proves that learning to describe your world with precision is the very first step to actually changing it.
So, to you, listening to this right now, look at your routine today. Look closely at the invisible architecture of your life. Are you stuck in a muddy rut, driving the same cart down the same track?
Are you paralyzed by analysis?
Yeah, endlessly researching the perfect running shoes but never taking a single step? Or are you ready to cast a new vote for who you want to become?
It all comes down to the actions you take when the deep dive ends.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. We've established this beautiful, empowering idea that our daily routines are the casting of votes for the type of person we wish to become. But what happens when our routines are almost entirely dictated by external forces? Think about it. When your alarm time is set by your corporate job, your lunch break is squeezed by societal expectations, and your evening wind down is completely hijacked by the engagement algorithms on your phone.
Oh, wow.
If you aren't the one actively designing your daily routine, whose identity are you actually building?
That is a chilling thought. If you aren't casting the votes, someone else is casting them for you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Remember, understanding the invisible architecture of your world is the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed and, more importantly, to being in control. We'll see you next time. Keep an eye on those foundations.
I want you to put yourself back in a very specific, very uncomfortable moment. Think about the last time you made a truly terrible mistake.
Oh yeah, we all know that feeling.
Right. And I am not talking about a tiny typo in an internal chat. I mean a genuine stomach-dropping, cold, sweat-inducing error.
The kind that just ruins your whole week.
Exactly. The kind where you hit reply all with something awful, or you accidentally delete the master database, or you back your car into your neighbor's fence.
Ouch.
You know that physical sensation. Your heart rate spikes, your vision narrows, and your brain immediately starts this frantic damage control. But here is the critical question for you listening. When the dust settled and you finally had to open your mouth to explain what just happened, what exact words came out?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Did you look the person in the eye and say, I broke this? Or did you feel this overwhelming urge to launch into an incredibly complex philosophical defense of your actions, like spinning the disaster into this whole web of context and intention?
Oh, almost definitely the second one. That instinct to spin a narrative is completely universal. I mean, it is almost never our first reflex to just state the bare facts of a failure.
No, we hate doing that.
We really do. We want to soften it. We want to contextualize it. We want to desperately prove that while the outcome was bad, our intentions were good. The moment we fail, our brain immediately turns to language as a shield.
And that shield, the specific vocabulary we use when everything goes wrong, that is exactly what we are unpacking today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
We have a massive, really fascinating stack of linguistic and sociological notes in front of us today. And our mission is to track the evolution of how humans talk about failure.
It's quite a journey, too.
It is. We are going to climb a very specific ladder today. We are starting all the way down at the absolute bedrock foundation of admitting a mistake, and we are going to climb rung by rung all the way up to the intellectual summit of how our modern culture processes success, privilege, and, well, self-worth.
And the foundational premise of this entire stack of research is something that requires a complete shift in how we think about communication.
How so?
Well, we are taught in school that language is a passive set of rules, right? A vocabulary list, a way to label things that already exist in the world.
Right, like an apple is an apple.
Exactly.
Right.
But the sociology and linguistics notes we are looking at today argue the exact opposite. They say language is the active lens through which you process human experience.
Okay, let me stop you there because we need to really dwell on that paradigm shift. The sources are arguing that words aren't just labels we stick on a failure after it happens.
No, not at all.
You were saying that by changing the actual mechanical vocabulary I use to describe disaster, I can literally alter how my brain psychologically processes that exact same event.
That's exactly it. The words you choose dictate the reality you experience.
Wow.
Think of it like the operating system of a computer. If your internal monologue uses passive, helpless language, your emotional reality is going to be one of helplessness.
That makes sense.
Right. But if you force yourself to use active analytical language, your brain begins to actually master the chaotic situation. As we move up this linguistic ladder today, we're going to see how upgrading your vocabulary physically changes your neurological and emotional response to things falling apart.
So for you listening, this isn't just an academic breakdown of grammar. We are going to reconstruct how you handle failure from the ground up. Because if you change your words, you change your reality.
Absolutely.
But, before we can get to the top of the mountain and philosophize about the meaning of life and toxic success culture, we have to deal with the immediate physical world.
We got to start with the basics.
Right. We have to know how to admit we just shattered the office coffee machine. We have to start at the foundation.
The baseline of failure communication, if you look at this through the lens of language acquisition, like an A2 level, the absolute priority at this foundational stage is clarity.
Just keeping it simple.
Very simple. It is taking basic, inescapable responsibility for a physical reality.
I kind of picture this level as your linguistic first aid kit. Like, if you slip in the kitchen and cut your hand with a chef's knife, you don't sit on the floor and start analyzing the metallurgical properties of the blade.
Or the historical origins of chopping vegetables.
Exactly. You look at your partner and say, I am bleeding, let's stop it.
Yeah.
You have to state the injury with total clarity before you can move on to the healing. So let's open up this first aid kit. What are the core linguistic tools in here?
Well, grammatically speaking, the most crucial tool is the past simple tense.
Okay.
When you are admitting a basic foundational error, the mistake has already occurred. It is a finalized event in the past. It is closed.
That finality is key. I made a mistake. There is nowhere to hide in that sentence.
Right, and notice the verb in that sentence. You didn't say, I did a mistake.
Oh, true.
In English, there's a very strict collocation. That's a natural pairing of words. We always make a mistake. We never do a mistake.
Wait, that is actually profound if you think about the underlying meaning of those two verbs. I mean, the verb to do implies carrying out an action like doing the dishes or doing your homework.
Right.
But the verb to make implies creation from scratch. When you build a table, you make it. When you cook a meal, you make it.
Exactly.
So even at the most rudimentary baseline of the English language, Admitting an error requires you to take ownership of creating it. You didn't just accidentally stumble into a pre-existing error. You actively manufactured the failure.
That is a really highly perceptive way to read the linguistics there. You are taking active, creative ownership of the disaster. And the sources point out that this daily foundation relies on some very specific load-bearing pillars.
What are they?
They are almost always irregular verbs. The big three that the sociological notes highlight for daily disasters are forgot, lost, and broke.
Ah, the holy trinity of ruining your own day.
Truly. You have forgot, which is the direct opposite of remember, so that implies a failure of the internal mind.
Right.
Then lost, which implies a failure of spatial awareness or organization. And broke, which is the ultimate failure of physical interaction, like, I broke the printer. These are simple, incredibly direct words.
But I want to inject some human reality into this, because I know from painful personal experience that if you walk into your manager's office, look them dead in the eye, say, I broke the printer, and then just stand there in complete silence.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is sociopathic. It is incredibly awkward and tense. It doesn't actually solve the social friction.
No, it doesn't, because conversational dynamics require a bridge. A factual report of the damage is necessary, but it is incomplete.
Yeah.
Stating I lost the client file and then just waiting for the other person to speak feels abrupt and almost hostile. Native speakers and effective communicators don't just state a mistake and walk away. They use a specific 3-step formula to navigate the immediate aftermath.
Okay, lay out the formula for fixing things at this foundational level. What is the process?
First, you state the mistake using that finalized past simple tense. You own the creation of the error. Second, you apologize to acknowledge the social friction. And third, and this is the most critical part, you offer a fast, immediate solution using the future simple tense. Specifically, relying on the phrase I will or the contraction I'll.
Let's run a simulation of this. I want to put this into a relatable workplace scenario from the notes. Imagine you missed a critical deadline.
Classic nightmare.
Right. Your boss is waiting on presentation, the client is getting angry, and you just realized you never attached the document to the email.
Oh, my stomach just dropped hearing that.
Right. Now, if you only use the first 2 steps of the formula, you say, I am sorry, I forgot to send the email.
Which just leaves the problem hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Your boss is just staring at you, absorbing all that negative impact. And the burden of figuring out what to do next has now been unfairly pushed onto them.
But if we add that third linguistic step, the formula completes itself. You say, I am sorry, I forgot to send the email. I will send it right now.
Yes. That tiny addition of I will is neurologically incredibly powerful. It instantly shifts the power dynamic in the room and actually in your own brain.
Really? Just those 2 words?
Absolutely. When you say, I forgot, you are a helpless victim of your own flawed memory. But the moment you say, I will, you transform into an active agent. You're taking immediate control of the reality you just broke. You state the past, but you dictate the future.
You state the past, but you dictate the future. I love that. So the linguistic first aid kit stops the bleeding by stating the facts, but the I will starts the healing process.
Exactly.
But this brings up a massive limitation, because what happens when the mistake isn't just forgetting an email? What happens when the situation is chaotic? The stakes are exponentially higher, and walking up to someone and stiffly saying, I made a mistake, I will fix it, sounds entirely inadequate.
Yeah, sometimes that just doesn't cut it.
It almost sounds robotic if the building is metaphorically burning down.
That is the exact threshold where the foundational tools fail us, and we have to step up to the next tier of language. In the source notes, moving past basic physical errors brings us to a more expressive, nuanced level of communication, sort of a B1 level.
Okay.
The situations are messier, the social stakes are higher, and the language has to evolve to handle that complexity.
And this is where we dive into the wild world of phrasal verbs.
Phrasal verbs are the workhorses of fluent, high-stakes communication. They're basically verbs paired with a preposition or an adverb, and that pairing completely alters the original meaning.
Right.
When it comes to describing chaotic failure, the sources highlight 2 dominant linguistic shock absorbers: to mess up and to slip up.
Let's pause on mess up, because I really want to push back on this.
Sure, go ahead.
Mess up means doing something badly, making a significant error. So instead of saying, I made a critical error on the financial report, you say, I messed up the financial report. I just have to ask why.
Why use that phrase?
Yeah. Why do intelligent adults use this phrase? To me, mess up sounds childish. It sounds like a kid who spilled juice on the rug. Is this just a psychological defense mechanism to hide from the severe reality of a corporate mistake?
It is an defense mechanism, but not in a cowardly way. It is a highly calibrated tool for managing social friction.
Okay, explain that.
Think about the physics of a car hitting a pothole. If the car has no shock absorbers, the rigid metal frame takes the full violent impact of the drop and the car shatters.
Right.
Language works the exact same way. When you make a significant, embarrassing mistake, the social impact is the pothole. Using a phrasal verb like mess up acts as a linguistic shock absorber.
So it actually softens the blow of the admission for both people.
Exactly. Stating I made a catastrophic error on the financial report is intensely rigid. It sounds heavy, formal, and really defensive. It puts the listener immediately on edge. But saying, I really messed up the financial report, well, that sounds human. It admits fault without sounding like a machine reporting a system failure. It invites empathy. It basically says, I am a flawed human who created chaos, and I acknowledge that chaos.
That makes a lot of sense. What about slip-up? That one paints a very different picture in my head.
A slip-up implies a careless, smaller mistake, but the imagery is deeply revealing. It is akin to physically slipping on a patch of ice. You were walking perfectly fine, you knew how to walk, but just for a fraction of a second, the environment betrayed you and you lost your footing. It communicates that the mistake was an accident of attention, not a fundamental lack of competence.
Right, like I didn't forget how to walk, I just hit some ice.
Exactly. So if you say, I tried to keep the surprise party a secret, but I slipped up and mentioned the caterer, it tells the listener, my core skills are intact, I just had a momentary lapse.
Okay, so if we use these shock absorbers to report the chaos, how do we fix it? Because going back to our A2 first aid kit, saying, I will fix it feels way too small for a massive, complicated disaster.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can fix a broken hinge. You can't just fix a ruined marketing campaign.
Right, we use phrasal verbs for the solutions too. The sources provide two crucial ones for managing complex chaos: to sort out and to figure out.
Let's test drive these because I want you, the listener, to feel the psychological weight of these words. Let's walk through a truly high-stakes nightmare scenario.
I'm ready.
You are an event planner. You have a massive corporate gala tomorrow night, 500 guests, VIPs, the CEO is flying in, your phone rings, it's the catering company. There has been a catastrophic internal error on their end. They have no food, no staff, and they are canceling the contract 24 hours before the event.
That is the definition of a chaotic disaster.
Absolute panic. Your heart is pounding out of your chest. Now, if you run into your manager's office sweating and yell, the caterer is gone, but I will fix it. Your manager's going to panic too.
Because fix sounds too simple. Right. Fix implies a simple mechanical repair. This isn't a mechanical repair, it's a structural collapse. But if you take a breath, use your shock absorbers, and deploy these new tools, you say, the caterer completely messed up the booking, but I'm going to sort it out and figure out a backup plan.
The linguistic upgrade there is profound. Let's break down why that sentence calms the nervous system of everyone in the room.
Please do.
To sort out physically implies taking a chaotic, tangled pile of problems and methodically organizing them into manageable categories. You are telling your boss that you're going to tame the chaos.
And what about figure out?
To figure out implies finding a solution to a complex hidden puzzle by actively investigating. You don't know the answer yet, but you are engaging your intellect to find it.
So by using sort out and figure out, you are projecting intense competence in the face of absolute terror. You are signaling that you aren't just applying a Band-Aid. You are actively wrestling a highly dynamic, dangerous situation back under your control. You are acting as the builder, basically constructing a brand new solution out of the wreckage of the old one.
Right. The initial shock absorber of messed up softens the delivery of the terrifying news, and the strong, investigative action verbs project leadership. You have moved from simply reporting a broken machine to actually managing a crisis.
But life isn't just about managing logistical crises. As we keep climbing this conceptual ladder, we leave the realm of broken coffee machines and canceled caterers. We enter the territory of moments that don't just ruin your afternoon, but fundamentally alter the trajectory of your life.
Yes. We are entering the realm of significant life failures. In the framework of language proficiency, this is where we transition into the analyst level, like a B2 level.
Okay.
This is a profound shift because we are no longer using language to report physical or logistical errors. We are now using language to interpret emotional, professional, and psychological trauma.
We are moving from fixing a schedule to fixing our own psychology. And the notes point out a crucial noun that acts as the gateway to this entire level of thinking: a setback.
Yes, a setback is defined as something that delays or prevents a process from continuing.
Like losing a major client.
Exactly. Losing a major client is a setback. Failing the bar exam is a setback. Being laid off is a setback.
Let's analyze the spatial metaphor hidden inside that word: setback. If you are walking on a path toward a goal and you experience a setback, you have undeniably been pushed backward. You lost ground.
Right, you're further from the finish line.
But the path is still under your feet. You haven't been pushed off a cliff into a bottomless abyss. It frames the massive failure as a delay in a longer journey, rather than the absolute end of the road.
That spatial framing is vital for survival, but we also have to acknowledge the immediate, visceral reality.
Which is usually awful.
Extremely awful. When a major setback first occurs, before you can process the long journey, the immediate emotion is often just crushing exhaustion and frustration. And the sources highlight a very specific idiom that captures the feeling of having all your hard-earned progress instantly erased.
Back to square one.
Yes, which derives directly from the mechanics of traditional board games.
Oh, like Chutes and Ladders or Monopoly?
Exactly. Imagine you spend hours rolling the dice, navigating obstacles, moving your piece forward, accumulating points. You're inches from the finish line. And then you land on a penalty space, and the arbitrary rules of the game force you to pick up your piece and place it all the way back on the very first square.
It is the ultimate expression of wasted effort. You can practically feel the heavy sigh in that phrase. Like, we spent 2 years coding this app, Apple rejected it, and now we're back to square one.
Total fatigue.
You are communicating absolute fatigue. But the human spirit can't stay on square one forever. The notes contrast this language of frustration with the language of deep, active optimism.
This is where we see language being used not just to report reality, but to actively build psychological resilience.
Right.
Resilience is the ability to recover elasticity after being stretched or compressed by trauma. When highly resilient people face a massive failure, they rarely call it a disaster. They reach for phrases like a learning curve.
Now, a learning curve is technically a mathematical graph, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It charts the rate at which someone acquires a new, difficult skill over time. So it implies that early incompetence is a natural part of eventual mastery.
Correct.
So if you say, my first startup failed miserably and I lost all my money, but it was a massive learning curve, you are doing some heavy psychological lifting.
You are forcibly recontextualizing the trauma. And the other, even more optimistic idiom highlighted in our sociological notes is calling a failure a blessing in disguise.
Oh, this one.
This describes a catastrophic event that, only in retrospect, ultimately yields a highly positive result.
Okay, I have to stop here. I need to challenge this because I think a lot of people listening might be rolling their eyes at blessing in disguise. I certainly am.
I get that.
Let's be real. If someone loses their job, loses their primary income, can't pay their mortgage, and they immediately post on LinkedIn that this is a blessing in disguise, are they not just completely gaslighting themselves?
It can certainly seem that way.
Is this not just a semantic coping mechanism to avoid facing the terrifying reality of their failure? I mean, if my house burns down, calling it an opportunity to redecorate is delusional denial, not resilience. How do the sources differentiate between healthy reframing and toxic delusion?
That is a phenomenal distinction to demand. And the line between the two is entirely based on when and how the language is deployed.
Okay, explain.
If you use blessing in disguise on day one to numb yourself and avoid processing the grief and the logistical nightmare of the failure, then yes, it is a form of avoidance. It is a psychological anesthetic. But when used correctly over time, it is the active, muscular practice of resilience. Remember, our core thesis at the very beginning, the language we choose dictates our reality.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. How does saying learning curve actually change my reality?
By calling a bankrupt business a learning curve, you are making a conscious executive choice in your brain.
Yeah.
You are actively forcing your neurological pathways to value the invisible knowledge you gained over the physical financial capital you lost.
Oh, that's interesting.
You are not denying that the money is gone. You are fully acknowledging the severe setback. But you, as the speaker, are grabbing the pen and dictating the moral of the story. You are deciding that the primary output of the failure was education, not destruction.
So you aren't gaslighting yourself, you are authoring your own recovery. You are refusing to let the failure be the final period at the end of the sentence.
Exactly.
Let's paint a picture of this in action. Imagine you are stuck in a stifling, bureaucratic corporate job. You complain about it constantly, but the salary is good, so you stay.
A lot of people are in that exact spot.
Suddenly, a massive restructure happens, and you are fired. On day one, you are devastated. You are back to square one. The fear is real.
Yeah.
But as you use this analytical language to process it over the next few months, you realize something. You hated that job. It was killing your creativity. The absolute terror of being unemployed forces you to start that independent consulting business you always talked about, but never had the courage to try.
Right. It forces your hand.
5 years later, the business is thriving.
Yeah.
You look back, and getting fired was literally the disguised blessing. The painful failure was the exact mechanism required to unlock your ultimate success.
That is the analyst level operating at its peak. You use language to interpret the wreckage, extract the raw value from it, and build a new, better path forward. As a tool for the individual, it is life-saving.
But, and this is a massive structural but, what happens when an entire society takes this beautiful individual concept of positive failure, scales it up to an industrial level, and completely weaponizes it?
Now we are leaving the personal psychology of the individual and stepping up to the intellectual summit of our deep dive, the philosopher level.
The C1, C2 level.
Exactly. We are transitioning into a sociological critique of modern success culture and the language that sustains it.
We're going to look at how modern society, as a collective, talks about failure. And honestly, looking at these notes, things get very strange and very distorted up here.
They really do.
The sources use two highly critical words to describe the modern business attitude toward failure, particularly in hyper-competitive environments like tech startups and Silicon Valley: fetishization and glamorization.
Those are loaded terms, so let's define their mechanics precisely. Fetishization means developing an unreasonable, almost magical or religious obsession with an object or a concept.
Okay.
And glamorization means applying an artificial layer of beauty to something, making it seem highly attractive, exciting, or desirable when, in its raw reality, it is painful and ugly.
We see this everywhere. It is inescapable. Think about the cultural mantras we are bombarded with on social media, in TED Talks, in airport business books. The loudest one is fail fast, fail often.
And you hear that one constantly.
It is preached as the ultimate life hack for innovation.
That mantra is the perfect specimen for our analysis today. It treats catastrophic loss, like burned capital, disrupted lives, wasted years, merely as stepping stones to guaranteed massive success. The underlying promise of fail fast is that if you just fail a sufficient number of times, success is a mathematical certainty.
It has become incredibly weird. I've noticed that in certain startup sectors today, if you haven't failed massively, if you haven't driven a company into the ground and burned through $10 million of venture capital, investors almost don't trust you.
Right, like you're too green.
It is as if failure has been entirely stripped of its negative consequences and has been repackaged as a bizarre elite status symbol. If you haven't failed, you haven't played the game.
Which is deeply problematic on a societal level. And this brings us to a psychological trap outlined in the sociological research known as toxic positivity.
I've heard that phrase a lot lately.
It's everywhere. Toxic positivity within corporate culture is the systemic insistence that everyone must maintain a relentlessly positive mindset, no matter how dire or mismanaged the circumstances are.
So no bad vibes allowed.
Exactly. It actively suppresses any genuine expression of frustration, fear, or difficulty. It forces employees to label every catastrophic management disaster as a great learning opportunity.
It's the weaponization of the learning curve we just talked about. Management makes a terrible decision, the company loses money, layoffs happen, and everyone is told to smile and embrace the blessing in disguise.
Exactly.
But why is this so pervasive? If failure actually hurts and bankruptcies actually ruin lives, why is our society so obsessed with glamorizing the wreckage?
Because our entire cultural narrative of success is infected by a brilliant, terrifying analytical concept highlighted in our sources, survivor bias.
Wait, stop. This is the part of the notes that completely blew my mind. I need us to dig incredibly deep into this because this concept changes how you view every success story you've ever heard. Let's unpack survivor bias.
Okay, survivor bias is a fundamental, widespread logical error. It occurs when a researcher or an entire society only studies the people, companies, or things that survived a difficult process.
Right.
And because we only look at the survivors, we completely ignore the thousands of entities that did not survive, simply because their failures made them invisible.
So we only look at the lottery winners and assume buying a ticket is a guaranteed financial strategy.
Exactly. Think about the publishing industry. We eagerly buy and read memoirs written by billionaires, tech moguls, and wildly successful athletes.
Sure.
And what is the narrative arc of every single one of those books? They invariably claim that their early, massive, crushing failures were the exact crucible that forged their greatness. They draw a straight, inevitable line from their lowest point to their highest peak.
And we read those books, we highlight those quotes, and we think, the secret ingredient to becoming a billionaire is to fail spectacularly. I just need to fail and I'll be rich.
But that is the logical trap of survivor bias. The data pool is hopelessly corrupted because we completely ignore the silent millions of people who experience the exact same early crushing failures. But instead of becoming billionaires, they simply went bankrupt.
Right.
They lost their homes, their marriages fell apart, their businesses never recovered, and they lived out the rest of their lives in quiet struggle. But those people don't get book deals.
No, they don't.
They don't give keynote speeches. They are invisible to the data set that society uses to define success.
This is a monumental point. Survivor bias gives our entire culture a statistically false impression that failure always leads to success. It romanticizes the trauma. It makes us think failure is this magical, inevitable cocoon. And if you just have the courage to step inside the cocoon, the universe guarantees you will eventually emerge as a successful butterfly.
Beautifully put, but completely false.
Right, because the brutal statistical reality is that most of the time the cocoon just dies.
That is the harsh truth stripped of its glamour. The fetishization of failure is largely driven by those few who survived it, rewriting their own history to make their struggles look like a destined path to greatness, rather than acknowledging the massive role that luck, timing, and unearned circumstance played in their survival.
Which leads us directly into a very uncomfortable, highly revealing truth about the modern world. If we strip away the glamour, the TED Talks, and the survivor bias, we have to look objectively at who actually gets to play this game, who actually possesses the privilege to fail fast and fail often.
This is where we move into the final, most complex part of our sociological analysis. And it is crucial to note for our listeners, as we dive into these concepts provided by the sources, we are looking at this strictly as an objective analysis of how societal architecture functions.
Yes, I want to reiterate that.
We are not making moral judgments. We are examining the little mechanics of success and failure.
Right, we are just looking at the blueprints of the building. We aren't judging the building, just seeing how the plumbing works. And the blueprints point to a concept called systemic hurdles.
Systemic hurdles are obstacles that are built into the very foundation of a society. These could be related to generational economics, class structures, access to elite education, or inherited social networks.
Okay.
They are barriers, or in some cases catapults, that exist completely independently of an individual's personal talent, intelligence, or work ethic.
So how do systemic hurdles interact with this cultural obsession with failing fast?
It creates a stark, undeniable contrast of privilege. Let's look at the mechanics of two different scenarios. Imagine a young entrepreneur from a wealthy, well-connected background. They secure funding from their parents' network, they start a tech company, and after 2 years, it completely fails. They lose millions of dollars. But because of their systemic safety nets, their family wealth, their Ivy League degree, their network of venture capitalists who view failure as a badge of honor, that failed startup is genuinely just a learning experience. They can absorb the financial shock, pivot their strategy, and easily secure a new round of funding for their next idea.
Because they have massive societal shock absorbers. The pothole doesn't total their car.
Exactly. Contrast that with the mechanics of a working class person who takes out a second mortgage on their only home to open a small local business, a restaurant, or hardware store.
Right.
If that business fails, they do not get to casually call it a learning experience on a podcast. That failure means total life-altering financial ruin. It means bankruptcy, foreclosure, losing their home, and devastating their family's economic future for a generation. They cannot simply fail fast and pivot. The first failure is fatal.
That is a chilling contrast, and it reveals so much about the hidden power of the language we've been studying. The narrative that failure is just a valuable lesson is often a symptom of extreme privilege. It is what sociologists call a luxury belief. It is a philosophy you can only afford to adopt if the failure won't literally destroy you.
Which is why reaching the absolute highest level of linguistic and philosophical fluency, requires us to view failure completely objectively. It requires us to strip away both the romantic glamorization of the billionaire and the crushing despair of the bankrupt individual, and look at what failure actually is in a vacuum.
And the sources give us a fantastic, entirely neutral phrase for this. They define failure simply as an inevitable byproduct.
Let's unpack the mechanics of a byproduct. A byproduct is a secondary, often unintended result of a primary process. It isn't the goal, but if the process is running, the byproduct is guaranteed to happen.
As I was reading the notes, the analogy that immediately jumped to my mind is sawdust in a woodshop.
That's a great visual.
Imagine you are a master carpenter. Your goal is to build beautiful, intricate, innovative furniture. If you are pushing the boundaries of your craft, trying new designs, taking risks with the wood, you are going to create sawdust. It is physically impossible to cut wood without making sawdust.
Right.
Now, you don't throw a massive party to celebrate the sawdust. You don't fetishize it and say, look at all this amazing sawdust I made. I'm a genius.
That would be absurd.
Right. But on the flip side, you also don't sit on the floor of the shop and cry over the sawdust, thinking its presence proves you are a terrible carpenter.
Yeah.
You sweep it up, throw it away, and keep building the table. The sawdust, the failure, is just the inevitable byproduct of the saw running. It just means you are doing the work.
That sawdust analogy perfectly captures the emotional neutrality required at this highest level of understanding. You accept the reality of the byproduct without attaching your personal ego to it. You don't worship it, and you don't fear it. And this concept of detaching your ego brings us to the ultimate peak of our deep dive, the concept of redefining success.
This is the culmination of the entire journey. We started at admitting we broke a coffee machine, and we have arrived here.
In the source material, there is one specific sentence that stands out as the most complex, difficult, and emotionally profound statement in the entire stack of notes. It is the pinnacle of this entire climb.
Let's hear it.
The sentence is, I had to stop equating my self-worth with my economic output.
I had to stop equating my self-worth with my economic output. We need to dedicate serious time to deconstructing this because this sentence is the antidote to the toxic success culture we just outlined. Let's break down the vocabulary. Equating means treating two totally different things as if they are exactly mathematically the same.
Right.
Self-worth is your fundamental value as a human being, your right to exist, be loved, and feel dignity. And economic output is your resume, your salary, your job title, your measurable capitalist success.
What makes this sentence so powerful is that it identifies the core trap of modern society. From the moment we enter the education system, we are trained to equate those two things.
Absolutely.
If your economic output is high, you get straight A's, you get a high salary, you secure a prestigious job title, you are taught that you have high self-worth. You are a good, valuable, and successful person.
But the immense danger of equating those two things is the inevitable crash. Because if your economic output drops, if you experience a massive setback, if your business fails, if you are swept up in corporate layoffs, then by that exact same logic, your self-worth must also plummet to zero.
Exactly.
If you believe that you are what you produce, and suddenly you produce nothing, you become nothing.
That is the darkest valley of failure. And that is why reaching true fluency, both in how you use language and how you live your life, means having the vocabulary and the philosophical framework to forcefully sever that equal sign.
How do you actually do that in practice? Because society screams the opposite at you every single day. Let's talk about the personal journey of someone who manages to survive this transition. Let's say someone's career takes a massive, unrecoverable hit. The industry they worked in for 20 years becomes obsolete. The systemic hurdles are too high to climb over.
It happens all the time.
Under society's old definition, they are a complete failure. Their economic output has flatlined.
If they are trapped in the old vocabulary, they are destroyed. But if they have reached this level of understanding, they actively refuse to let that zero dictate their human value.
Right.
They use a new internal language to redefine success entirely on their own terms. They might decide that their true value lies in their resilience, their quiet ability to withstand the storm without breaking. They might locate their worth in their connection to their community, how fiercely they support their family, or how they mentor others. They stop looking at their bank account or their LinkedIn profile to tell them who they are, and they start looking at their character.
To bring it back to our analogy, they stop looking at the pile of sawdust to determine their worth, and they realize they are still a master builder, even if the shop is currently closed.
Beautifully said. The language they use internally gives them the psychological armor to survive a reality that would otherwise crush them.
Okay, we need to take a massive breath because we have covered an unbelievable amount of ground today.
We really have.
Let's do a quick look back down the mountain and retrace this journey you, the listener, just took with us.
We started on the ground floor with the linguistic first aid kit. We looked at the necessity of the past, simple tense, and taking direct ownership by stating, I made a mistake, and shifting the power dynamic with, I will fix it.
Then we climbed up and installed our linguistic shock absorbers. We learned how to handle chaotic social friction by admitting we messed up, but proving our competence by promising to sort it out and figure out a complex solution.
From there, we moved into the analyst level, exploring the deep psychology of resilience. We faced our setbacks, acknowledged the exhaustion of being back to square one, and learned to actively author our own recovery by reframing failures as a learning curve.
And finally, we ascended to the philosopher level. We looked down at the entire societal blueprint. We deconstructed the fetishization of failure, called out the survivor bias that pollutes our data pool, acknowledged the systemic hurdles that dictate who gets to fail safely, and learned to sever the toxic link between our self-worth and our economic output.
Leading us to our final objective takeaway. Failure is not a demon sent to destroy you, and it is not a magical guru guaranteed to make you rich. It is simply the inevitable byproduct of trying.
So the next time you make a mistake, whether you are learning a new language, trying to start a business, attempting to fix a relationship, or just navigating the daily chaos of life, remember that it isn't a disaster. You just generated some sawdust. It's the inevitable byproduct of pushing your own boundaries and building something new.
And the specific vocabulary you choose in that moment of panic will determine how quickly you can sweep up that sawdust and get back to the work of building your life.
Which brings me back to the question I asked you at the very beginning of this deep dive. Think about that terrible mistake you made. Think about the exact words you use to explain it to yourself and to others. Today, we've seen the mechanics of how drastically language shapes our reality, specifically around failure. But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
If the vocabulary you use literally dictates how you process your reality, what other aspects of your life are currently being defined by someone else's vocabulary? Are you using words you inherited from a toxic workplace or a stressful past relationship, or a society that insists on equating your worth with your output? If you were to consciously upgrade the words you use in your own internal monologue today, how would your entire reality change tomorrow?